What I've observed on that
This
sampling
Carver
program.
City Council workshop is now in session. Do we have any public comments?
No, sir, no one signed up.
All right. And let's begin this review of the draft plan for Parks and Recreation.
Mayor, thank you, and Parks Board, thank you for also being in attendance. We wanted to plan this joint workshop of these two important bodies as we start coming to a conclusion of this Parks Master Plan update, which, as you all know, has been in progress for really a couple years. You all initiated this really kind of in the early part of the pandemic, and unfortunately, because of some of the restrictions we had on ability to gather in large groups, it ended up being a longer process than we anticipated, just because we felt like we really needed to be able to have those events to be able to get that very important community input into the process. So today is really kind of a culmination of that collection of information from the public, and it's not necessarily a lot of new information. A lot of that is going through many of the priorities that were set in Kerrville 2050 and many of the visioning aspects that were set in Kerrville 2050. It was simply getting more input, a little bit further, a deeper dive into some of that input and some prioritization of some of those aspects. So with that, we'll turn it over to Ms. Ashley Boyle to further present to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank y'all for coming and for your time. I'm probably just going to stand and float around the room, but if you can't hear or see me, just let me know. So we placed a couple of things at your desk in front of you. We have a PowerPoint, and then we also have the draft plan. We're going to kind of look at both of them, but right now, pull out the PowerPoint, if you will, and we'll go through that, and then we'll move over to the actual plan. So first, I thought we would do some introductions. I think this is the first time that our board has met with the council, and I'm not sure if everybody knows everybody, so I thought we would do some introductions. We have our mayor, Bill Blackburn. We have Mayor Pro Tem Kim Clarkson, she's place 2. We have Councilman Roman Garcia, place 1. If y'all just want to kind of raise your hands. Councilwoman Judy Eichner, place 3. And Councilwoman Brenda Hughes, place 4. And there for our Parks Board, we just had a couple of new members roll onto the board, so we do not have a chair at this point, but we do have our vice chair, which is Dr. Huber representing the board. David Bartles. We have Cave Johnson. We have Michelle Yanez. And David Bartles, if I didn't already say your name. These are all that we have from the Parks Board. And we also have our former chair that just rolled off, Celeste Hammond, and we asked her to come and attend today as well. She was very instrumental and part of this plan over the last couple of years, and so she can certainly answer any questions you might have as well.
Yes, Wayne.
Oh, Wayne, I'm sorry, Wayne Baker.
It's in the corner.
Did I miss anybody else?
Yep.
Okay, great. And then we have our 2 assistant city managers. We have Kim Meisner and Michael Hornis as well. Okay, and our city attorney, Mike Hayes. And also here today is Malcolm Matthews. He's our former parks director and consultant that helped us with this project, and so he can certainly answer questions. Okay, moving on, just a reminder why we're doing this. Parks are important because they promote a healthy community image, a sense of place, boost economic development and quality of life for our community. As Mr. Hoppy mentioned, this ties in very closely with Kerrville 2050. There is actual guiding principle and action items asking us to update our master plan. Our current master plan is from 2008. It's an old document, and it needs to be updated in order to be grant eligible with the state. Like I said, it's a complementary document to Kerrville 2050. It's a 10-year document. We will update and review it every 5 years, take a look at it, and it also follows the format of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department's guidelines on their master plan requirements, in addition to the National Recreation and Park Association's guidelines. So it'll be accepted by both organizations. Okay, so moving on, we began this process in 2021. City staff and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board have been working on this at every single meeting for the past year or so, and the board has been designated as a steering committee for our master plan update. We are required to have a steering committee from the state, and they serve in this capacity. We had an extensive public input process for this plan update. Again, this is an update to the plan. It is not a rewrite. We are updating. We're taking the current projects that we've already done, we're striking through them, and then we're adding the new projects that are consistent with Carver 2050 in the public input process. We held a public input meeting on December 15th at the Diederich Center, and many of you were present, and I appreciate your participation. We also allowed the opportunity for email submissions, so if folks can attend that, we opened it up to allow them to email me directly their comments, and we incorporated all of that into the entire list. After we received all of those comments during the public input process, we went through, we added every single item to the list and prioritized them based on the number of dots that they received and the number of support they received. And then we took that information and then we built a survey in which we put online. And we asked the community again, hey, here's the feedback from the input process. Tell us again what your priorities are. And they did. We had a couple hundred people actually participate in that survey, which is great for our community. Again, all of our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meetings were open to the public, and we had some people come here or there and participate and offer feedback. And then also today's meeting as well, it's an open public meeting as well. So moving on to the back page, the process for this update includes the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board's engagement. We had several meetings, and the draft was unanimously approved by the board on March 10th. We then submitted the draft plan to the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department just to make sure that we're going in the right direction. They preliminarily approved that draft, which gave us the confirmation that we're going in the right direction. We have all of those check boxes checked. It will then go to the City Council, which is here at a draft setting, and then it's also scheduled for your meeting of the 26th to adopt the master plan by resolution. And then after that is adopted by council, we will then submit the final plan to the state. The state requires us, the council, to adopt a resolution adopting the plan in order for them to approve it. Does that make sense? Seems a little bit backwards, but they require the resolution by the council. Any questions so far? How we got here, why we're here, why we're doing this? Pretty clear? Okay, so moving on to the actual draft plan. This is a draft. It's still being a little bit massaged. Content is not going to change. All the projects and the majority of the verbiage is staying as is. We're just going through and I'm just making small edits, cleaning up, maybe adding some pictures here and there. But this is essentially it. So we talk about in here all of the necessary things that are included. We'll kind of skip over that information, but the state requires us to have information on types of parks that we have, the community data, the jurisdiction, the ETJ, excuse me, the population of Kerrville, what's our planned growth. We also include in here the amenities that are not municipal facilities. We include county parks, we include the Diederich Center, the Kroc Center, the schools, the ISDs, because all of those facilities also serve the community as well. So people can go over to school playgrounds and play on them, and it kind of fills that niche. We talk about our public input process in here, and then beginning on page 10, we start listing out all of our different parks and the type of use. We have about 27 municipal parks. Our newest one is Ranger McDonald Park. It's 1.5 acres. That's over by the landing that was dedicated. We go over and detail all of our trails, our trail system, and other privately owned facilities. It talks in here about the standards. Again, reinforcing that we are following the state and the national guidelines that set forth for the master plan adoptions. We define types of parks. So we have neighborhood parks, we have community parks, we have regional parks, which serve a bigger population and bigger acreage and amenities that they have. We have linear park, which are trails, or river trails specifically, trails at Singing Wind and Shriner Park. We have special use facility type parks, which would be the boat ramps, library park complex, things like that. And then we have open space parks, and that's essentially their purpose is to be undeveloped and to protect the natural environment of those parks. Okay, page 25. As we mentioned, we are streamlining this with Carver 2050. We have already adopted our Carver River Trail Master Plan a couple of years ago. We did the Nimitz Lake Boating Center study a couple of years ago, and also the Olympic Pool Feasibility Study. So all of these are mentioned in here and will be added onto the plan as an exhibit. We identify all of our goals and objectives with Kerbal 2050. We have our own chapter. It's chapter 11, and we outline all of our guiding principles in here, and then the specific action items for each guiding principle. Okay, so I'd like to review the actual identified projects based on the feedback. So in our public input process, we heard a lot about reinvesting in our parks. And the number one park that was identified and prioritized was actually Singing Wind Park. And if you see on page 36, I'm going to go through each of these items. And then if you have any questions, you're welcome to jump in and stop me. Okay, for Singing Wind Park, the number one priority was to develop a master plan or a mini master plan to address the listed items. We have a plan and we work that plan. Repurpose the softball fields, the lighting, consider a dog park, a pump track, a disc golf course, BMX track, etc. All of those ideas were identified numerous times throughout the process. We've actually already have made some progress on a dog park over there. We have 2 fields over there that are not being really used since the sports complex opened. And so what we did was we opened up those 2 fields for a temporary dog park while we're doing some work at the Lehman Monroe Dog Park. And then we've left it open to see how people use it. Are they using it? Do they like it? Is there a purpose for it? And they are. And there is still 1 field that's available for softball for its purpose.
Can I ask how you identify how often they're using it or who uses it or when they use it?
Yeah, it's more just a drive-by assessment because we have staff working in the park. And so we'll go and we'll drive by, like I drove by yesterday and saw 2 people on field 2. And
Nice.
it's just more of an observation.
Sure. Okay.
What is a pump track? I don't know what it is.
So on track. That, it's essentially a special use type bike track, and it's just the way that they use the bike on how they navigate the course.
Okay.
Okay. Enhancements to the skate park was identified. The skate park was built with the intention of having a phase 2, which has not happened yet, and that's still something that we heard from the community. They're very interested in building the phase 2. They would like us to upgrade the lights at the skate park, add trail benches to the back side of the park, which is actually really easy. That's something that we can already do now. Add on-street parking along Olympic Drive for additional parking. Consider an additional park entrance at the corner of Olympic Drive and Loop 534 with parking and trail access. And develop Singing Wind Park as a bike park with multiple features. Add flow mountain bike trail.
What about the 534? Do we have proper? What do we have on Olympic and 534 where we could put parking? I was curious.
So it would be up on the Olympic Drive side of the park. So the back end of the park goes a good ways up Olympic Drive.
Okay.
So that's where they identified additional
Okay.
parking in that area, potentially.
So not all the way up at 534.
Right. Yeah, because that's not our property. Right.
Right.
Okay. So lots of good feedback on Singing Wind Park. Again, that park is very large park in our inventory. It just hasn't been updated or touched in a long time, and we're hearing that feedback. It's time to update it. The Olympic pool was another park or facility that was strongly identified. Again, this is something that I think the council has heard numerous times over the past several years, is the facility's old, it's 50 years old. It's a rectangle with water in it, and we have issues with it, naturally, being an older facility, which we've addressed a lot of those. In addition to, they want an expansion. They want a year-round facility where they can swim in a heated pool. They want recreational features. They want to build swim teams for the schools. They want to build programming, let us bring the kids over from the schools, teach them lessons, do swim teams for the university, do swim teams for the high school, and that sort of thing. And that falls in line with our aquatics feasibility results as well. So, still relevant. Carver Shriner Park was the next big park, prioritizing number 3 on the list. Again, develop a park master plan to address the listed issues. They'd like to see us renovate and make improvements to the water line, which we're already doing. Restroom and shower upgrades. I don't know if y'all been to this park recently, but those facilities are quite old and are in need of upgrades. Road repairs. Upgrading some of the tent loop sites to accommodate RV sites. RV sites are the most popular loops that we have. We have a couple of tent site loops that do not get as rented, and so there's an opportunity there to maybe upgrade those RV sites to generate more revenue and to open up additional sites. Potentially expand the hillside and add RV sites and add Wi-Fi capability for our campers. Wi-Fi is something that we've heard for the past, maybe 5-7 years. We'll get campers calling, hey, do y'all have Wi-Fi? And we'll say, no, we don't. And they're like, okay, never mind, we'll go somewhere else. But then we also have the folks that want to unplug too. And so if we could have Wi-Fi, we might appeal to both. So you can always turn that off. And then looking at potentially, how do we fund these big projects, right? We did a study of how much it would cost to develop the hillside of the park, to add more RV sites into the hillside, add recreational features, and that came back with a very hefty price tag that we said, oh, well, we can't afford that. We're going to put that on the table here, and then let's go and see what we can do and potentially make it a future phrasing project. Mountain bike trails, we have about 12 miles of trails at Carver Shriner Park. We have a great group of folks that love the mountain bike trails, and that's what they do. They actually help us maintain them, and they want more mountain bike trails, and we have the space to do it, so that's pretty easy. Create a master plan for emergency access to trail system. We're already working on that with our folks that maintain the trails. And then adding dogway station. Again, another easy checkbox items that we can do now.
Ashley, what was that number for funding?
That one came in between 20 to 30 million.
Okay.
Again, that's rough estimates from our consultants. It could be narrowed down
Okay.
Depending on what amenities you want to strike.
Okay. Thanks.
Has included things like new RV sites, utilities, the concrete pads, spray grounds, basketball courts, seating, trails, all sorts of different little mini Disney World. Okay, Louise Park, the next park on the list that was identified for improvements. Again, develop a master plan, a little mini master plan to address the listed items so it's organized. Do repairs to the dam. Add a multi-purpose sports court, basketball, pickleball, soccer, workout equipment, things of that nature. Enhance the aesthetics of the bridge in the park, maybe a public art opportunity. Expand the storage at the Pavilion. Develop safe access to downtown. Enhance the dog park at Lehman and Monroe. And then we have several miscellaneous park improvements that were heavily identified and supported, but not enough to make them their own category. So we have them listed here as miscellaneous. So number 1, identify which parks are in most need of renovation. Number 2, per park dedication fund and other fund allowances, address identified renovation in parks. Number 3, for all playgrounds, update all old playgrounds, which is what we currently do and we budget for. Add shade canopies and ensure accessibility for all. Number 4, create a tree planting program for parks, streets, drainage ways, medians, bike, pedestrian routes, and other public places, including the river corridor. This is something that would be partnered with like development services and planning. Use only native drought-tolerant plant species and limited irrigated turf and landscaping on all city properties, to set an example. Improve or add to Carver Park Pavilion restrooms and encourage greater community involvement in this park, possibly working with the Doyle Center. Add additional parking on the soccer side of the sports complex and create access to Town Creek with parking. Install security cameras in parks along trails with most need. Add more dog parks to existing parks throughout the city. Explore and install public Wi-Fi enhancements at the pool, Kerbal Shriner Park, Kerbal Sports Complex, Louise Hayes Park, and downtown areas. Develop accessible playground for physically and mentally challenged individuals of all ages. Replace the lighting system at the Kerbal Tennis Complex. That is something that we could not do within the recent renovations due to budget. So that's still on our list of items that needs to be addressed. For Granger McDonald Park, design and implement the improvements. This could be the potential boating facility or additional swimming pavilion type access. Create recycling stations in all parks with educational signage, and then avoid the acquisition or development of public pocket parks due to high maintenance costs and low utilization. As a reminder, pocket parks for anything under an acre, they're very invaluable to us. They're high cost to maintain. They're not a great place for usage. They don't have a lot of amenities to offer. Right, moving on to page 38, the river trail and trails also majorly supported in the public feedback. And again, if y'all have questions, feel free to stop me. Expand the river trail from G Street to downtown library on the north side of the river. Expand the river trail to the west of Louise Hayes Park on the south side of the river. Improve pedestrian access from downtown to Louise Hayes Park by the way of the Sidney Baker Bridge. Create hike-bike trail along Town Creek. Connect to the river trail at a north-south hike-bike trail. Again, more pet way stations near trailheads and along trails. That's easy to do. Update master plan for the river trail and identify funding options to extend.
Let me say that Saturday night at Pine Cloud, we saw and visited with a group, probably, I don't know, a dozen folks from Houston that were here for the bike race and stuff. And once again, they were talking about their love for the river trail. I mean, it's interesting to me that there are some people in Kerrville that think once we had the river trail, maybe we could be cool. So, hey, but I want to ask you this, a couple of things. Is there ongoing training for the Parks and Recreation workers on environmental issues?
Yes,
Like where to mow and when not to mow?
there is. We're actually working with UGRA on that.
Okay, good. A couple of the things. I thought there were 23 parks, and then heard you say at City Council there were 26, now there's 27. Not for approval, but if you would let the City Council know when a park is added, because like I brag on Parks and Recreation all the time, but I want to be accurate and maybe talk about the latest and that kind of thing. All right, one more.
Okay.
How do you see the eventual expansion out to the ETJ affecting things? You've talked about that here, but how do you see it happening?
Well, it depends on the growth, right? The population of Kerrville and the growth area. And as the community population grows and as we have more neighborhoods develop in areas, whether it's in the ETG or within proper, we'll need to identify those areas and look at, hey, right now, where are the needs? Right now, Kerrville has a lot of parks, significantly more than national standard for acreage per person. And as that changes, we'll need to go back and look and see where are those gaps at, right? And plan accordingly for that. So right now with parkland dedication, we're very fee-based on that because of our saturation with parks. And as that changes, we will need to maybe look at, hey, instead of the fees for this area development, we want you to add a park. And that way we can have diversity of parks within the community.
I said that was the last. I got one more because you just mentioned it here. The national figure is 10.5 acres of parkland per 1,000 population. Right now, we're at 40.44 acres of land per 1,000 population. I know that changes when you factor in the ETJ. This is probably not the question to raise at this meeting, but do we have too many parks?
No, I don't think so. Our community.
Yeah, I don't either, actually.
Yeah, no, it's a great question because of the amount of acreage that we have. It's a valid question. In my opinion, my professional opinion, I do not think we do. There's some small pocket parks that I think that if we could, move those off of our books legally, it requires legislation to do. But as far as our designated parks, I don't because our community is so outdoor recreation oriented that they're utilized and they're capitalized and they're not overly populated.
Yeah, Ashley, I have a question about the pocket parks. I know that there is one that extends back behind Galbraith. And my question is, do you have any plans for the existing pocket parks to maybe weed them out, or are you going to just make sure that we don't have any future pocket parks?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
So it's on our list and in our plan, Triple 2050, and this plan is not to acquire any more. And that's something that happens through the Parkland dedication ordinance. And so we make sure when those plans come through that we identify that and say, no, this doesn't meet our standard.
Okay.
And go forward from there. I don't know, Mr. Hayes, if you want to talk through briefly the requirements, the process for eliminating pocket parks.
Well, the process for getting rid of any park, you have to go through an election. But there's an exception to state law that applies to parks of smaller acreage, but it only applies to some of these bigger cities. And so the thought is that we ask Representative Murr to sponsor some legislation to get us one of those exceptions because we have a whole host of those parks that were just kind of
we're maintaining them.
Right. And we shouldn't have really accepted them because some of them are no bigger than a lot.
Right.
Houses and
Yeah, and they're really not. I mean, yes, I utilize that park all the time, but I never see any company. It's just me on that little park. So
yeah.
I think there's a differentiation too. We have park land that's unimproved that, as Mike mentioned, may have gotten donated when the property was subdivided,
right.
but for all practical purposes isn't really developable. And so those are the type of park land that we really would be looking at some opportunity for. We're not necessarily looking at developed pocket parks, trying to do anything differently with those. Those are, although they may not be highly utilized, they may be someone's favorite park
Right,
as well. And so
right.
just want to be really clear, we're not taking anybody's developed park away.
Well, actually, I know you're not quite through, but since we're kind of doing questions right now, I guess my thought is first, thanks to to you and Mr. Matthews and the board for spending all of this time and doing this great research. I guess my question, thinking through on a budgetary and prioritization standpoint, is under your miscellaneous park improvements, identify which parks are most in need of renovation. So it's very overwhelming to me. If I were trying to go through this process and I had this great research, the implementation piece of it and where to start, and then are we going to expect some changes budgetarily maybe coming forward in future budgets to take care of this? And I know one piece of that is in eliminating or trying to eliminate future pocket parks, getting some money from development when development goes forward. But I guess maybe that's for you, Mr. Hoppy, to, what prioritization budget, what does it look like right now?
So currently, with the outdated plan, we are not eligible for grant funding. So right now, what we do for budgeting purposes is we identify what can we budget and tackle and do in our general fund operating budget. And things like pet waste stations, that's easy. Those are small dollars. Things like capital projects, redeveloping a whole park, that's a whole nother bag of apples. And so what we do is we identify all of those capital projects and needs, and then we come up with our list and we submit it during the budget process. So those items get added onto the capital projects list, the CIP list, pursuant to funding. So they might just be hanging on the list saying, hey, we know we have these identified projects. We know we don't have funding for them right now, but we've heard you and they're on the list. And then there might be some projects that we do allocate funding for, $100,000 or $200,000 smaller projects that we can tackle. And then another part of the funding piece is what can we tackle with our Parkland dedication fund too. So there's certain projects like the Carver Park improvements, small things that we can tackle utilizing the dollars as well. Mr. Hoppy,
Yeah, so both of those, as you know, are kind of wrapped into that budget process in the summer. Some are more operational, as Ashley said, because they're small projects. Some are more on the capital side. We're also exploring opportunities to tap into the philanthropic community. We've been very successful in getting philanthropy in the past that have helped us expand our park system. For instance, we just installed playground equipment at the sports complex that's open to the public to utilize. And so that was just one great example of us continuing to expand our park system in ways that maybe our budgets don't necessarily allow for us to. But we're looking at some other opportunities to better tap into philanthropy out in the community, just to be able to extend those resources, taxpayer resources, so it's not all on the burden of the property taxpayer.
I'm curious with McDonald Park, what has been done there? Anything yet?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No, it's completely undeveloped.
Okay, that's what I thought.
We don't advertise that right now. I mean, it's a city park. People, figure it out. That's fine. So we essentially mow it, maintain it. It's undeveloped, and then until we do develop and make good use of the park, we will then add signage and advertise it, include it in our list. It's not listed in our activity guide.
Ashley, we had kind of a crisis situation with the Olympic pool, and we had to spend some dollars on that last year that we may not have anticipated having to spend, but wound up spending. Do you see anything critical going on this year that might require some budgeted dollars?
At the pool?
Well, at any of the parks?
Oh, man.
Anything critical that we may need to be looking at for budgeting purposes?
Nothing that would, not that I can foresee at this time, that would be any sort of emergency critical repair.
Okay.
It's more of deferred maintenance things
Okay.
that we know need to, get out to the list.
And
And
even
replacing playground equipment, things like that.
Yeah, and just to clarify on that, kind of back to what Mrs. Hughes was saying, will we expect as council when we're looking at budget to see some level of increase in general operating budget for parks after having prioritized and put this in place?
I think we'll go through the budgetary process. We're in the process right now doing that with departments and kind of going through all the needs assessments. And so, it's coming up.
Potentially.
Absolutely.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's a combination, right, of operations and capital budgets.
So yes, I did submit, I think
You put it all
the
on
finance director, mini heart attack when she's like, "You asked for how much? $3 million budget." And I'm like, just keep in mind that goes on your CIP list, But yeah, so we submit. I submit my wish list, knowing that the piece of the pie is only so big, and then it gets prioritized.
Okay. And even the pool it's not going to need emergency things right now.
I think the work that we did in the pump room most recently, those emergency repairs should get our mechanical equipment by for the next several years.
Okay.
As far as plumbing and infrastructure failure shell of the pool, that's something that we do need to keep in mind. It's old infrastructure. We probably do need to look at replacing that, those lines and those infrastructure eventually. But right now, there's nothing critical. We fixed leaks. We renovated the pump room. We made sure that there's no leaks in the deck. There was no leak in the shell. We fixed all that. We replastered. That's something that you have to do every 7 to 10 years. And so right now we're maintaining that Band-Aid's on.
I think your former chairman has a question.
Well, I was gonna just throw this in, and it's probably a much smaller part of it, but quite a few of these things that we included in here were to be in conjunction with another group, whether it be Riverside Nature Center or UGRA or Kerrville ISD, some other organization that would also be supplementing the fund. So it's not everything on here is totally 100% having to come out of Kerrville. That we tried and looked a lot of different ways that we would be able to work with other organizations to do some of these things as well.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions. So going back a little bit to what I think Councilmember Clarkson brought up about identifying which projects are in need of the most renovation. I guess what I may be confused on is when we look at section or chapter 9, are the parks, including the Olympic pool, I know that's not a park, but are those not listed in the order in the priority order, or is the priority order the numbered projects under the different locations?
So they're listed in priority as far as park,
Okay.
and then priority end of the park.
Okay, so we may already have an idea of, like, we may need to just start with sinking wind and look at what we can do from there and then move on. Is that my understanding?
That, according to the plan, that's what the community would like it. That's
Okay, okay, I wanted to make sure because I thought I was getting a little confused there. Secondly, do we have anywhere like an identification, I don't think it's in here, but of pocket parks, and so we can be aware of where we need to start looking at in terms of whether we go to election or get that exception to dispose of them in some way?
Yes, we do have that list.
Okay. And is that something that we can get sent to us just because I'm curious where all those are?
Sure.
Okay. And then
And again, just to be clear, we have a listing of undeveloped parkland.
Right.
I want to differentiate that from pocket parks because again, we're not proposing to do away with
No,
existing
absolutely.
pocket parks. So I just want to make sure that's very clear.
Absolutely, yeah. Is the list, well, I guess suggest this, is the list include those developed ones or undeveloped ones? Because I'll just take the undeveloped
Yeah,
ones.
we'll double check, but we have a list of undeveloped parkland, very, very small parcels that we'd be happy to get the council to
Okay.
be able to elaborate.
Yeah,
We
like,
have developed parks that we're looking to get rid of,
Correct.
including pocket parks.
absolutely. Thank you. And then my last thing, just a small minor thing I think it may be a typo, but on page 28, in the bold section on the second paragraph at the top, it says chapter 9 beginning on page 30. Should that say 36? Is that what we're looking at?
Okay, ready to do that again?
Chapter 9, it's at the second paragraph, the bold part. Chapter 9 beginning on page 30. It's what it is, 30. I was referring to that right there.
We can look at that.
That's all on that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so, great questions. Covered River Trail. The golf course was another facility that was identified for updates. The golf course is in 2024, it'll be 100 years old. It's a course that has a lot of deferred maintenance to it. We're gonna need to be looking at replacing the greens. And we're looking at doing some bathroom remodeling right now with some budgetary savings over there. If you play golf, you've been in those bathrooms, you know the condition of them. Cart path improvements is on the list. We've already in progress with some of that through philanthropic funding. And then we're also budgeting in each budget a little chunk of money to put towards cart path improvements. And then reforestation as trees die due to age or ice storms or bad weather, to come up with a plan and replant for lost trees. And then several different items under general Guadalupe River, riparian area, and Nimitz Lake items, removing undesirable plant species, managing parkland along the river, protecting, utilizing green infrastructure as much as we can, plan and implement more recreational amenities along the river, create a swimming pavilion, ensure that any publicly accessible location along the river are free of obstacles. That can be tricky because we do not own the river, the state does, and so that's a little tricky on that one. Improvements to McDonald Park, and again, another swimming pavilion with river trail access. And then dog parks. People in our community love the dog parks, and they want to see enhancements, improvements, and expansion. So, and that's pretty much all I have for you. Again, this is a draft. The content's not going to change. There might be, like I said, it might look a little different. You might have some different pictures in here. We're going to be tacking on all of the exhibits to the final version. But we did want to allow the opportunity for the council to see this, see what the community, all of their input that they put forth, and all of the hard work that the community and our board did to put this together. And so I want to thank y'all for your time and for your comments, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Great, questions, observations?
Appreciate the time and everything that Parks and Rec Department did and the board. I know it took a really long time and a lot of effort, so thank you, and especially to our former members as well.
Anything else? Right, we do not always open for guests at the workshops, but we'll be around to answer any questions or whatever. I would just like to say that I'm really proud of our Parks and Recreation Department. I think Ashley does a great job. She's got a great staff, great input from the board, and great community support. What you do is appreciated. Really is. All right, this concludes our workshop. But yes, Mr. Hayes.
Just say this, their merchandise that they're developing, they're killing it. I mean, I wear their stuff and I get asked all the time, where do you get that?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that, I don't know, I've never been over there. I asked Rosewood this morning how to do that, how to access that, and they're open, 7 days a week, and it's pretty neat stuff.
Out on Bandera?
Great, thank you for bringing that up. We did bring shirts for each of you. If you would like a new River Trail shirt, they're the soft shirts. So we have several different colors. So please visit Rosa, grab your shirt. And again, thank you for your support.
All right, good.
This workshop's, I was saying, sorry, before we go, we still have an executive session. Portion to the workshop.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion for council to adjourn, and any staff that needs to be with us, to adjourn into executive session under section 551.074 for item 3A, and then for 3B, sections 551.071 and 551.073.
All right.
I will second that, Mayor.
Second, all in favor of the council? Yeah. Okay, we're going into executive session. So we are out of the workshop and into executive session.
But before we go into executive session, can we have a brief adjournment, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
5-minute adjournment, then we go upstairs. Okay.
Take the elevator.
Take the elevator right here. Okay, all right.